Kia ora and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with New Zealand artists. I'm your host, Mandy Yarkich. These conversations are intimate, uplifting and insightful. The guests on the show have absolutely enriched my life, and I'm sure their stories will have the same effect on you. Thank you so much for joining me to listen to these amazing people speak about what drives them, the way they work, and their personal takes on life. Janet Hafoka is a visual artist based in Tāmaki Makaurau Auckland, working primarily in the medium of photography. Her art practice focuses on transience and time passing. Her current work explores both the uncertainty and the beauty in the short-lived. The centuries-old fascination with the golden hour is referenced, known as the brief period after sunrise and before sunset when the sun casts a golden light. With decaying leaves and seed pods illuminated, falling and in flight, her current images seek to breathe life into nature past its prime. Through this process, her work highlights value where existence is temporary. It also questions how we depict and remember that which is no longer. Janet shares her experience returning to her passion for the arts and completing a degree in visual arts in her early 40s. We discuss how she discovered her love of photography, how light, skies, movement and decay influence her work so much, and her magpie qualities and love of collecting things. I absolutely love Janet's photographs, and her story is really interesting, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Mandy.
It's lovely to meet you.
And you.
Thank you for coming out on this gorgeous sunny day at Muriwai Beach.
Yeah, it is lovely today. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I am really looking forward to hearing your story. You've got beautiful photographic works at the moment, which are on your brand new website, which I completely love. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing how you got to that point. So can you take us right back to the beginning and tell us about your childhood?
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm born and bred in Christchurch. I'm the youngest of 4 children. So my father was a high school teacher, and my mother, she started out at art school in the 1950s and eventually trained as a primary school teacher, but she still retained that creative side. What we did do a lot, we had a batch over at Akaroa on Banks Peninsula, so a lot of my childhood was spent there, and you're always influenced by the harbour there, I guess the skies, things like that. A lot of time spent there and at the beach, and I do recall my mum when she had a bit of time to herself, she'd be set up at the table there and she'd have her watercolours out and always be painting and sketching and things like that. And sometimes I'd just watch, or sometimes I'd join her. My mum was also an expert in craft. She did a lot of sewing, quilting, knitting, calligraphy. She'd sell a number of things she made to the Ballantyne's department store in town, and she'd also dress dolls, antique dolls for the Christchurch Museum. So she's pretty skilled in her craft. So Mum would photograph clouds as well when we were back in Christchurch, and she was always fascinated by the Northwest Arches, and sometimes she'd take photos of them across the sky, like half a dozen photos in a panorama, and then she'd sellotape them all together. It was a bit before Photoshop, but I would always be, just probably picking up on that and looking at the skies, and we'd often be looking at the cloud forms and making out various shapes in them, the two of us, which I found a bit of fun. And I guess I always had that connection just with the natural world, just with the sea and the sky, and loved the water and would go for swims. Often the water was a bit bit colder than in Auckland, but it didn't put me off when I was a kid. So it's funny how it doesn't, but anyway. So, always had that sort of connection, I think, and always a bit of a magpie collecting things, I suppose, whether it was shells at the beach or skeletal leaves or just little small things that would fascinate me as well. So, I'd bring all sorts home with me, all sorts of collections of things.
I guess you felt sort of encouraged with your own creativity at that time.
Yeah, it was just interesting. We had a room at home and we had a big set of architectural drawers there which had a lot of my mum's work from when she did her art, and there were shelves that wrapped around the room just full of books. So I'd spend a lot of time in there either doing art or looking at my mum's art or just reading all sorts of things. So, that I guess it was always sort of just always informed by that sort of thing and influenced
just part
by
of your life.
Yeah.
And were you actually making and creating as a child?
Yes, I'd have to say I was, even from primary school age. So I'd be sitting on the floor and collaging or drawing or painting. And then when I went to high school, I took art right through and art history. So, it was always something I was really interested in and loved doing.
And at that point, were you thinking you'd like to make a career out of your visual art?
Well, I did wonder about that. Before I left high school, I was considering doing graphic design. And so I did have a look at that. But my mum she suggested that I might be best to keep art as a hobby and go into something else. So I didn't really take it any further than that at the time. So,
which is very common for for our kind of age group, isn't it? For that generation of just not really believing that it could be your sort of primary career.
Yeah, that's right. And I can see where she was coming from as well, because, it's not the easiest making a living out of art, but, people do it. Anyway, so I sort of, I would still do it from time to time, but, it wasn't thinking of it as a job at that point. Yeah.
So where did you go to after school?
So basically, when I was about 18, my path took me elsewhere and I moved to Auckland. And it wasn't really until my late 30s and after my two children reached school age, I started creating art again. So in between that time, I worked in a law office and I trained as a legal executive. And so that's what I did for many years. And I still do that, just part-time as well. I do enjoy the job and I love the contact with clients and all of that side of it. So that's something that, I haven't regretted doing and I do still enjoy. So
which is great.
Yeah. And so I ended up doing just a small art course and that turned into a diploma. And then eventually turned into a visual arts degree, which I completed sort of around when I was about 40. So
wow,
better late than never.
Yeah, which is so great, isn't it? It's very inspiring for people, to actually take that move when you're older. So did you leave your legal executive work and you were full-time at school?
No, I didn't. So I still did that part-time, albeit very part-time. And, obviously I had the children as well and and did the study. So I did it over 6 years instead of 4 and
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, you must have still been very busy.
Yeah, it kept me out of trouble.
Yeah, I bet it did. And what were you thinking when you went to art school? What were you sort of hoping for and what made you feel like you wanted to do that?
Well, when I started, because I've always been someone who would sketch, draw, paint, that sort of thing, but I found just when I was working out my ideas and concepts, I'd start to pick up a camera and often the experiments I'd do with my camera would end up being the end result. Or, some of my best work came out of those experiments and it just happened quite organically. And so I did have a period just going into my second year at art school and you had to decide, what media you're going to work in. It's not so much now, but back then it was. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? So I actually dropped the painting and went into photography. And I haven't looked back on that either. So it felt like a turning point for me at the time.
Yeah.
But
and you've been doing photography mostly
ever since. Absolutely love it. And it's just it's a really good way of working out ideas. You're not starting with a blank canvas, which is always a bit daunting when you're painting, and the immediacy of it. And it just really helps me, just when you're deciding what to include, to exclude, it defines that really quickly, what you're framing when you take an image. So, it works really well for me. Yeah.
That's so great. And were you, what was it that made you feel like you wanted to go to art school? Were you hoping to kind of rekindle your art, or were you hoping to create a full-time art career from that? Or, what were you actually thinking when you went back to school?
I guess it was just something I'd always been passionate about, and at that point I just realised how much it was helping my well-being and just intrinsic in who I am. Well, I had left it for a while but still felt compelled to come back to it. I didn't think too far into it being a full-time role, maybe part-time, and I just hadn't gone any further than that, but it was just something I felt compelled to do, and I had the opportunity to do it, so I thought, I better grab that. Yeah.
And I wonder if your work would have still developed without going to art school. What do you think?
I think it would have developed in different ways. My style has changed over the years. It was quite graphic and quite a lot more formal. Now it feels a lot freer, and I tend to experiment a bit more and just have a bit more fun with it, and just see what comes out of it. And I think it has influenced me going to art school for sure.
And good for your confidence, I guess.
Absolutely.
So what kind of photography were you doing at art school, and sort of what were you doing when you left?
To begin with, I was photographing tides and looking at those, so a lot to do with water, and lots of different aspects of that. So I was experimenting with a lot of what's revealed, what's concealed, layering things, a lot of that sort of thing. So I did that probably for the first year, and clouds also did come into it as well. I just think they're both, I guess, of a nature where they very much morph and merge and dissipate and things like that. I found that really interesting. There can be transparency, you can see through clouds, there's layering, the same with water as well. It can be transparent, or it can be something that you just can't see through. It's just so deep. Just there's so many aspects to them that really interested me. And what I did find when I was at art school, a turning point for me was when we had to do a general education course. This was through the University of Auckland, and it wasn't really something I was that interested in at the time, but we had to do something that was outside our normal curriculum of study. So I chose an educational psychology paper there, which I did, and there was basically part of that involved memory, and basically it was about its fallibility in terms of false memory, just how you are actually recalling things, and also memory loss. And at the time, it was fairly poignant for me at the time because my mum's memory was getting a bit fragile. And so I was just looking at those aspects, both of those aspects, sort of in terms of, I guess, forgetting, and also, just the accuracy of your memory. So I started doing lots of experiments around various aspects of that. It could have been like exaggerating or overinflating things. It could be perhaps omissions, which then give a different impression or context to others. It could just be, just how we're representing things. And so I started to think about just nostalgia and, just how we choose to remember things. And with nostalgia, it's remembering things fondly generally. And it's, was that actually your experience at the time? And sometimes in retelling these stories, is that actually the case? So I started looking at that as well, and just how we retell things and represent things to others, and started questioning with nostalgia, I guess, those aspects. So, for example, there was one work that I did that was a horse from when we were in Banks Peninsula that my sister had, and it had been mistreated, and we picked it up and looked after it in the end, but it was always very unpredictable and quite volatile. And if I was in a field with it, I would, it would give me the heebies. I'd be like, what's going to happen? I didn't feel entirely safe. But if we're talking about it, we'd be saying, oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, we had a great time over there. We had the dogs, the cat, the horse, go off riding. But the reality of how I actually felt about that horse was quite different when I thought about it. So we had this old Polaroid photo of the horse, and had blue eyes, Palomino, and basically I took this Polaroid back to black and white, and I enlarged it to like larger than life, and it started to almost look a bit X-ray like or ghostly or unicorn like. All of these different things started to come out when I did that, and the quality of the photo wasn't there, being a Polaroid, so you blew it up and it was actually quite it was quite blurred. And when you stood close to it, you couldn't see what it was, and then when you stood back it was revealed, which kind of reminded me about distance with its short-term memory, long-term memory. It's more the long-term memory that perhaps you might recall things. So I just found that really interesting.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
And I used water on it as well. People would say, oh, you photoshopped it, but basically I put the photo in water and then rephotographed it, and so you had all of this flow going through and through the eyes and everything else kind of going through it, so it started to look quite ghostly. So I put that up at the art school on the weekend, and people came in Monday morning going, what? Who did that? Because, it was just a bit unusual. So, yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, but I just wanted people to have that feeling of that unease as well. And I was just thinking, how did I actually feel at the time? What was my experience then? Oh, it was actually more like this. So
that's
really
that's what interesting
I did.
And such a great sort of inspiration for making art.
Yeah.
And did you actually communicate alongside that work what the memory was, or did you leave that for the viewer?
No, I just left that for the viewer, yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of things I do are in camera. People think it's done with Photoshop, but it's not. I'm often just playing with different experiments around it, and just how it turns out. So, yeah. And then there was another one, I guess I was looking at just with memory loss and forgetting as well, and just thinking about with my mum's memory and how it wasn't there to the extent it used to be. And she would get frustrated at times. She would just be like really struggling. She just wanted to recall it, and you could just see the frustration on her face, just trying to line things up and articulate them. And so she'd done a lot of, I think I've mentioned a lot of quilting in the past, and so and she'd given me a quilt. I think it took her about 9 months to make. She'd done it by hand. So I photographed that, and it was full of lots of remnants that we'd had as children, dresses made out of it, everything else, that she kept all of those, she put them into the quilt. So even just looking at the quilt, reminded me of so much. And so I photographed it, and then I ended up layering it. So I'd have a photograph, and then I was thinking about reflection and looking back. I also had glass over the top. I had the same image over the top. And then when you actually looked at it, it was really hard. You couldn't actually line it up. So you'd be trying to line it up. You might walk to the left or to the right, and it would shift and move, and it just wouldn't stay static. And it was a bit frustrating. It was really hard for me to even put the thing together. But so it was basically these sort of quilt works that were quite faded, but yeah, they'd just constantly move, and I was just trying to express my mum's frustration, but also just to acknowledge her and the influence that she had had on me early on, and elevating that craft into art and that sort of thing as well. So
that's really, really cool.
I was just sort of experimenting around that as well. So that was just like another. So I did a series of works like that at the time too.
At art school.
Yeah, that was at art school. Yeah.
Oh, I love those ideas. And then that idea of celebrating memory and that kind of thing and nostalgia. Did that continue through your work as you left school?
I think, it did to a certain extent, but I did start to just move away from that. It's always there, I think, in the way that you're telling stories or just, your recollections and how you represent them. But what I did come across after I left art school, I was starting to do a new body of work for a solo show. So the show I was looking at was called Ephemeral, which basically means the impermanent and the short-lived. So that had ended up quite a focus for me, not just with the memory aspects, but also started to come into other things. So, yeah, with the clawed glass, basically what it was an instrument that was a mirror, and it was had a blackened back to it, as many of them do, but had these qualities where it would basically reduce the tonal values on what you saw, and it would also give in its reflection a burnished glow, a slightly golden glow. So what people would do when they were going to paint a scene, they'd actually turn their back to the scene that they wanted to create, and in front of them would be the mirror, and so the mirror would be reflecting the scene behind them, and they would paint what they saw in the mirror, so which would give them that sunrise or sunset or whatever. And it meant rather than just having that short period, they could spend the day or however long to create that scene. So
that's so interesting.
Yeah, and
fascinating.
There's actually one of them I've seen that's at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And back in the day, the well-to-do as well, I also understand that, if they were travelling from A to B in their carriages, some of them would actually have this mirror mounted on the outside, like a side mirror on a car. So as they were travelling along for the day through the countryside, they'd get to see this glorious sunset outside the window. So,
oh my gosh, it's so funny.
Yeah. So they could just keep it going.
That is so good. What a good story.
Yeah.
I'm going to look into that.
Yeah. So that really interested me. And also just looking at other things, I think mentioning that I'm a magpie as well and collecting things, and along with the sunrises and sunsets, I was also looking at other things of nature, like the form of skeletal leaves and petals and seed pods, and they're lately also incorporated in my work. So I sort of had, just these sunrises. I mean, everyone likes a good sunset, really, and likes to make the most of those moments. But yeah, just other things as well, and they're impermanent in themselves. So, they just decay and fall away. They're all just impermanent in various ways, short-lived. So
you look through, you go to nature also for that ephemeral.
Yeah, I think, I'm just drawn to things in nature. So, and, often these, when I was just on my walks, I'd go for walks up Mount Eden or various places, and I'd just stumble across different things on the way. Once in a while in someone's garden, I'd just go over the fence just a little bit and just pick something. But and they're often just things that that you'd overlook or you might stand on. In the end, my neighbours, when they saw what I was doing, they'd end up sometimes I'd come home and they would have dropped things off on my doorstep that they thought might be good to photograph as well.
That's
so
great.
They and quite a few of them I did. And then sometimes I'd end up, even I thought, that would look great. I ended up sweeping a neighbour's driveway just to get their leaves.
That's so
I think they
good.
were in bougainvillea bracts and things like that, or hydrangeas or whatever. They thought that was a win-win situation.
That's so good. That's
and
perfect.
then I gave them one of my little artworks of what I swept up off their driveway.
That's really great.
Yeah. So
and what were you? How were you actually incorporating these objects from nature into your photographs?
Well, what if I had to describe my artwork, what I'd say they are, in contrast to landscapes, are skyscapes. So they're there with no grounding. You can't see the land at all. You really are just looking up at the clouds. And in their various forms. And then along with this in the foreground are various forms of nature and decay, such as the leaves, the petals, the seed pods, that sort of thing. And among all that, something which is a big influence for me is light. So, just various stages of light and often just a really subtle light. But sometimes it also might emulate, perhaps, like when you get those moments where you've just had rain and the sunlight's just coming out through a cloud or something, those really dark skies and then sunlight's breaking through, things like that. So it incorporates all of that. Yeah.
And it has such beautiful contrast with your, especially with your latest work, the dark clouds and then the sort of lit up falling objects. Yeah, so the objects are quite illuminated. Often they are. Once in a while I'll do one where they're not, and it's interesting, you end up with silhouettes pretty much against the sky. So, and that's different again. So I've got a series called Last Light, and that's what those ones are, where they're in pretty much a silhouette rather than the gold sort of coming through. So really beautiful.
They are quite precious, those moments, and they pass so quick. So I quite like that aspect of it.
And the fragility, like you said, of the actual objects that feel so sort of fine and light compared to the sort of heaviness of the skies behind. It's such a beautiful contrast.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, really cool. So how do you actually create these photographs?
Yeah, well, takes a bit of effort, I'd have to say. I'd like to say that I get it in one go, one click of the camera, but unfortunately that's not the case. Basically, I need the right conditions. So, there's a lot that has to line up. I kind of relate it to a bit like fishing. Some days you'll get something, some days you might even get a couple of things, and then other days just nothing at all. When I talk about conditions, just the right amount of sun, and it doesn't even have to be strong sun, just, the clouds have to be there in the sky, and also just right conditions in terms of the wind, not too breezy, not too light. So, there's a lot that has to line up, and, sometimes I might just, almost just run out and, just be out there for quite some time. And other times I'm just waiting for a moment perhaps where the wind might just drop a little or come up. So in some ways you end up being very observant of nature and what's surrounding you at the time when you're doing it. It's quite contemplative, quite mindful, when I'm taking those images, and I'm just waiting for the right moment, basically, when things are all going to come together.
And so you don't do any layering, you capture the sky and then you layer.
Yeah, it is a photo. Yeah. So, there is a bit to it. I don't tend to tell everyone the whole process. I think it's nice to leave something up to the imagination. But yeah, it is taken in camera. It is a photo, and it is out in nature. So yeah.
And do you always rely on the sun for the light?
I do, apart from some of some other images I've started doing recently, which are quite different, but I'll talk to you about those shortly, no doubt. Definitely need the sun. So, and again, the sun goes behind the clouds, comes out. So sometimes I really am waiting for a moment to happen, and to just, find, just when everything all lines up. And
which is quite beautiful, isn't it? And that's really sort of capturing a moment in time as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I used to get a bit frustrated when I first started, because if there was a gust of wind and I wasn't careful, the objects I was photographing would just be gone. They'd disappear into the garden, and it was almost like they were transparent, and I guess they are to a certain extent, but do you think I could find them again? And I might only have so many, and then it's like I have to go off to someone and say, hey, have you got any more of these? Or we'd have to wait till the next season to get some more.
I can imagine.
So, I used to get frustrated, and then I thought, well, hey, this is actually part of the process. This is what it's all about, It's, they're here and gone sort of thing, And, they basically disappear in different ways, whether they decay or they're just blown away, taken by a breath of wind or whatever. So,
or lost under a bush.
Yeah, exactly. So once in a while I find them, but sometimes I just don't. So, yeah. So, but now I just think, just that's just part of it. And so that would be the only thing I'd have to say I found frustrating at first, and now I just don't get too concerned by it.
And do the objects need to be transparent? Are they always transparent?
Nearly always. I did try different ones. I've experimented quite a lot. I mean, I think it emphasises their fragility when you see the skeletal side of those leaves. Or, some of them are bracts, some of them are petals. But I think it does help. Yeah. So.
And does that capture the light or hold the light better? That kind of more sort of fragile texture, or that more transparent
I think
material?
It does a little. Yeah, I think it does a little bit. Sometimes you'll just get a glint on something, that's a bit decaying, and, I find that really interesting as well, just where the sun just happens to hit it.
And then the decaying aspect, I suppose, takes the colour away, doesn't it?
Yeah, so, I've got a couple where it might almost be black, but you've also got these golden tones coming in as well, and I quite like that contrast of the decay and the beauty. So, I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
And the heaviness and the lightness, I think. The heaviness of the sky is a lovely contrast as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that does help with things. I mean, and look, the objects I've got, they're always decaying. I mean, I might run out of time and go and re-photograph them later on and discover they've actually further deteriorated, and what I thought I was going to do could be quite different. But, that's okay. But, it's just, they don't stay the same.
It's part of the process.
Yeah.
And do you ever photograph fine sunny days, or was it always more sort of brooding, heavy skies?
Bit of both. Often it's, I mean, they can't be perfectly fine days because there's no cloud. I need a cloud. So, I guess I'm just watching out. It might just be like, a day, perhaps a day like today. I think I can see a couple of clouds out there, and it's just a light breeze kind of thing. Yeah. But sometimes, I have got a couple of interesting photos when it did rain and the sun came out, and that was really interesting because you did have those really deep dark colours in the clouds.
Beautiful.
It's quite hard to get those, but it's nice when it happens.
And do you use Photoshop, without talking too much about your process? Do you use Photoshop at all?
I do. I use it for minor refinements afterwards, and probably similar to what you do in a darkroom. So there might just be extra fragments of leaves or something. There was one time I was photographing and the neighbour next door was trimming his hedge, and then when I went to look at the images on the computer, it was absolutely full of all these tiny little fragments of bits that had come off the hedge, for instance. So that was really messy. So I actually didn't use those in the edge, but
it could have added something quite lovely.
Yeah. I did think about that. I thought, can this work? But it was just too much. It was everywhere. And he asked me at the time, and I was like, don't worry, that's fine, just go ahead. But then just the camera picked up everything that was in the airborne. And he wasn't even that close to me. So sometimes there might be something that I just sort of think, well, no, I'll just clean that up or whatever. But
I love that idea though of tiny fragments.
Yeah.
I mean that could be an interesting concept to develop, I guess.
Yeah, and sometimes I've had this, like there might have been seeds falling out and things. A couple, I think, that I've just left them there, and so there is that, absolutely. That
sort of accidental element.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I mean, sometimes things do happen that you don't expect, and it is good to just experiment with those and see how it works out. So, I'm often taking quite a lot of photos, and then, there'll be quite a process of reviewing them, editing, expanding on ideas before I have a resolved work. Sometimes just really interesting compositions come out of things naturally, and it's not always what I expect, but just I guess it's when you do take a lot of if someone does take a lot of photos, and just naturally, and then they'll just look at the ones that may work. So there's that as well. So I would have difficulty doing a commission, I think. If someone wanted it to look exactly a certain way, I'd that would be an absolute challenge for me. So it's really just what comes at the time. But it does it can take a little while.
Yeah.
Once in a while, I might get something very quickly, and other times it could take hours. So, yeah.
And so do you have in your head what you're aiming for on that particular day with the particular materials you have, or are you kind of just experimenting?
Look, it might even just depend on the materials. I mean, they move around in different ways, and some might float up in the air and be gone easier than others. Some might be more weighty. Even just the form of them makes a difference as to how, of course, they move. If you're dropping them, some might spin, others just delicately flutter down. Some can be like little helicopters. It really just depends. So if the weather's a bit challenging, then that might influence my decision what I might photograph that day. So I might start off with something and end up photographing something else. Yeah.
And all of the objects are falling.
Yeah, so they're all basically they might be, well, they could be floating, up, down, sideways, just
moving.
Yeah.
In the environment.
Yeah.
And that sort of movement you really capture so beautifully.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah.
And so from that series, the ephemeral series that we've put on your blog post, some of those images, where did you go from there?
So, I mean, I would say that still is a reasonable focus on things, but I'm just looking at different objects and experimenting with those as well. And also I've just started creating some new works called illuminated, which means to enlighten. And these ones are indoors, so quite different from what I have been doing. And so they're illuminated in the dark. So it refers more, rather than the Romantic period, more to the Renaissance period, and just where they would create basically those real contrasts with the light and the dark, emphasising the form of something. It would add drama as well, and just experimenting with that at the moment. So I've been doing those, just particularly sometimes quite early in the morning when there's no light, but that might change shortly with daylight saving about to kick in.
It's got so dark in the mornings lately, all of a sudden.
Yeah, but if it's a bad day for photographing outside, I can be photographing inside.
Yeah, that's quite a good thing.
It just gives me that versatility. Yeah, it gives me that option.
What, are you still thinking about decay and using similar objects for that series?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. And they do start to look a bit different again. So, and some are coming out almost quite silver. You haven't got the light from the sun. It's a different sort of light. So just interesting to see some come out quite gold and quite silver, almost metallic, a little bit precious. It's just quite interesting to just see, what naturally comes out with them when I'm photographing indoors. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
And great to have that sort of flexibility where you kind of decide on what kind of day you're going to have and what the weather's doing.
Yeah, totally.
And then respond to that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you've done all this amazing photography over the years. Have you actually been exhibiting your work?
Yes, I have. So I've been exhibiting, I'm just trying to remember back, probably for 10 or 12 years now. Started off doing a solo show over in Devonport many years ago, and a lot of group exhibitions in between then and now. And then I did do another solo show as well, which was just in Mount Eden, on Mount Eden Road at a gallery there. So yeah. And
are you actually connected to one gallery in particular, or how do you approach galleries and become part of a show?
Yeah, typically, no, I'm not with a particular gallery, and at the moment that's worked for me because just with what time I have, and then I choose basically when I exhibit. But I am finding I'm going to have a little bit more time than I expected coming up, which will be great. And so, possibly actually looking at going with a gallery could be much more of an option than it has been in the past. So where I feel I can devote that time and, do that. So I definitely wouldn't discount it, but just haven't done it up till now. So, yeah.
And it is amazing that you've worked, nearly full time and then had your art practice on the side that has sort of continued, as well as being a busy mum.
Yeah, I guess so. And look, it is getting easier. The children have left home now, more time there for starters as well. And look, sometimes just, it's something I really enjoy, so it might go over onto the weekend a bit as well, and that's fine, you just find time. So, still manage to get things done. So yeah.
And how do you find the commercial aspect of your work? How do you actually sell? I know that you've got a new website coming. Mm-hmm. So as this podcast is published, I think your website will be published also, your new one. But so you have your website. Can people buy your photographs through the website?
Yeah, and that's the intention, because often I do get people asking about the prices and things like that, and I thought that way they can just go straight to the website and it's all there for them. Yeah, so they're basically limited edition prints, very, good quality. So, and often when people see them in person, they're just like, really. I've had a very positive response, fortunately.
Yeah, I bet you have. So they really do have a big impact.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful just on a small screen. So I'd love to see them big and in person.
Yeah.
And you sell it all through Instagram?
A little. A lot of it's done more when I'm exhibiting and that sort of thing, or through word of mouth, that type of thing. Or people have just seen them somewhere around town and that sort of thing. But I do need to put more effort into promotion. And
how do you find promoting yourself as part of the package?
I think it's always hard. It's not so much promoting myself. It's probably more promoting my art. I need to think of it as that. It does feel very personal, what you create and you put out in the world. And so just getting used to that. But, that's just life and life as an artist. So, that's something that I do need to do more of. So, yeah.
And are you connected to any photographic festivals or publications?
At the moment, I'll be looking at the Auckland Festival of Photography coming up. So I've been accepted for that, which is really cool. So I'll be participating in that. Basically, I'm going to be, my work's going to be in a window up K Road, right near the bus stop where everything's passing by, lots of foot traffic and, buses and everything else. So that'll be a bit of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's something as well. And also just looking at going in an international publication. They're keen to have my work in that. So that won't come out right away. It's going to be perhaps in another 3-4 months sort of thing. So, but that'll be in the pipeline too.
And do you think that's something that you'd like to develop further and becoming part of sort of more photographic festivals or communities in some way?
Oh yeah, totally. And hopefully with a bit more time freed up, I'll be able to do that much more. So yeah.
So good.
Just all such good opportunities, Yeah. So, yeah.
And it's just getting that balance right, isn't it? And so your job, your job has changed a little bit, but you're still going to be working as a legal exec.
Yes.
For a law firm. And that is going to be a bit more part-time going forward, which is great.
Yeah.
A little bit more time for your art. Can you see yourself actually becoming a full-time artist at any point?
Well, I do enjoy the work I do, and I love the client contact. And so I'm quite a social person. I'll just have to see. I mean, when I do my art, it's a very solitary thing, and I'm happy with that. I like being in my own headspace and doing my own thing there, but it feels like a really nice balance. I wouldn't discount anything. You just don't know what the future may bring, but at the moment, the balance, I think, is working pretty well. Yeah.
That's great. So good.
Yeah.
So are you actually thinking about the potential of a solo exhibition in the future?
Yeah, I'd really like that. And I feel like I'm getting a new body of work together as well, that, I'm well on my way. So, that's a real possibility. So, that's something that I'll hopefully be looking at just over the next year or so.
And I think together. that body of work would just work so beautifully as a show. It's amazing. It would be amazing to see, as I said earlier, in the flesh. But also the two series combined, the ephemeral with the illuminated, would be
that's
beautiful.
right, with the light and the dark and the contrast of those. Yeah, absolutely. So, I was thinking
It'd be
something
really
along
stunning.
those lines. Yeah. Well, thank you.
And will you be looking at a gallery to be
it could be a
of?
possibility. That could be something on the cards. So just have to see what the future brings. But,
and it's great that you do have a little bit more time now to devote to your practice.
Yeah. I'm very, very fortunate with that at the moment. So I'm just making the most of it all.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah,
and sometimes having that exhibition deadline can be a good thing. For
totally.
Work.
Yeah. Nothing
keeps
like
you honest.
Yeah, totally.
So let's just start talking about the last 4 questions, Janet. What would you say to your younger artistic self, whether that's sort of around the art school stage or younger?
I'd just say allow yourself freedom to have fun and be a bit experimental with your art. I mean, I started off quite, I guess, set in my ways and, would always be thinking, ahead of myself, I suppose. But just to be in the moment, be a bit inquisitive, be a bit playful, and just trust the process. Sometimes it might feel like things aren't going well to begin with, but some of the best work I've done has come from experiments. So, and often the final work might have been an experiment. So, I'd say that. And just another thing, of course, is it's never too late to start if you're thinking of doing art. I mean, I didn't really, go to art school until I was sort of in my late 30s, early 40s. Just never too late. And
just on that, actually, if you don't mind me asking, how did you find being at art school as an older student?
Look, it was fine. What I did find, because I had other commitments, I was part-time work and my children were young at the time, I did do my study over 6 years instead of 4. And so there'd be a progression. Sometimes I'd end up in a different year and new people coming in and everything like that. But no, I just didn't really even find it an issue because we all had the same things in common, and you were still bouncing ideas off each other. You'd have these critique sessions and it was just as valuable. It didn't matter what age people were. And I just did things at a pace that I could manage, sort of thing. Yeah, so it worked out fine.
That's brilliant. So good that you managed to do that finally.
Yeah, I know.
Can you tell us, Janet, who your favourite or most admired New Zealand artists are, and then perhaps some international artists as well?
Okay, well, there are so many. It is a bit hard to know where to start. I'd say just from early on, from my childhood, there were a lot of artists from Canterbury going back then. One of them would have been Bill Sutton from the 1950s and his skies, Canterbury skies. And there's one artwork in particular, Nor'wester in the Cemetery, just where it creates that sense of place with his imagery, as many, artists did back then. But that just really resonated with me. And, a lot of photographers as well, Anne Noble, Fiona Partington, Lisa Rahina, they do film work as well. But they've been a big influence on my work.
Mm-hmm.
And internationally, again, so many. Alfred Stilichs, he's from way back. He created, he influenced me quite a bit. He created a couple of bodies of work. One was called Music and the other was called Equivalence. And we're going back to the 1920s here. So it's quite a way back. And it was basically, when photography was thought of as more perhaps an objective and mechanical process. And he was taking photographs of clouds. And they were ungrounded, which just, from what knowledge I have, just hadn't been done before. So it's quite groundbreaking. And really, in doing that, he was expressing the feelings and ideas of the artist. So, it was quite a turning point then, and I just love his work. So that was something I was looking at early on. And another one from back a little way, the 1980s, Doug and Mike Starn, they're twins, and they're from New York, and they did some work called Attracted to Light, and they had a fascination with photographing the ephemeral, the impermanent, the short-lived, that side of things. And the subjects they would have would be, leaves that were in decay or moths that were drawn to light, and that's where their demise came from, and snowflakes, and they'd be photographing these in great detail, and of course snowflakes would melt, and that aspect came in. And what I did find really interesting is, because this was before, they were doing Photoshop, and they would have their photos, which they'd taken and developed in the dark room, and they would have this image that was laid out as a grid, and they would basically put it all together like the size of a big mural, and it might be a massive moth in great detail. And so they'd have all of these photographs, and the way they put them together, they'd put them together with sellotape. Now, I don't know if you know too much about sellotape, but once it's left a couple of years, it can yellow, it can go quite brittle.
Yeah.
And that was all part of the work. So, it wasn't, that last bit wasn't refined, and their papers were often quite crumpled or damaged, that sort of thing. So it wasn't a perfect thing. So I found that really interesting, just the way that they displayed their works as well as the subjects.
Yeah, totally.
Another artist I admired, Laurie Salmons. She was a photographer and New York based as well. Her work goes back as far as the mid-1970s. So look, there's so much I could talk, so many aspects about her work, but what I was focused on, she would photograph inanimate objects, and in her case it was dolls, but she'd imbue them with life, and she'd be putting familiar objects in unfamiliar contexts, which I found really interesting. And a lot of what she was dressing at the time was to do with memory, and in particular nostalgia, and those moments and how you choose to remember them. She talks about a Kodak moment, which is not quite real, but was quite perfect, and it might just be... someone was just talking to me about that recently. They were trying to get a family together for a photo, and I think it was after lunch, and just trying to, like, herding sheep and basically trying to get everyone together. And then, of course, you click the photo and everyone's looking very happy families and all that. And of course, that's the way you want to remember things, isn't it? Yeah. So she talks about, framing that and representing that. And you look back on that photo and, basically that becomes what you remember in the end. And so she talked about memories and how they can become cleaner and more beautiful over time, and they can also separate from reality and almost have an aura where everything becomes pure. And I found that really interesting as well. And so some of that's fed back into, what I do as well.
You can see that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's a great list.
Oh, thank you. It's a very short list compared to what I could have. But
no, not at all.
Yeah.
And what do you find most challenging as an artist in the capacity that you work?
Look, there's probably a couple of things. One, I would say time. No matter how much time you have, there's never enough time. There's always just so many ideas, and whether I'll get to them all, but it's a good position to be in. There's just often just when I'm making, it sparks off another idea. It's the way it works. So yeah, I'd have to say I would always love more time. And sometimes the technical, sometimes it is a bit challenging for me. Obviously I can use a camera, but I'm always learning. Different aspects, and when I try a new body of work, that can change. So there's that. And look, I'd have to say the other would be promoting my art. I do tend to focus on getting a bit seduced by the making more than anything else, and I probably should be promoting it a little bit more than I do. So that's something that I do need to focus on. Yeah.
Very common problem, I would say.
Yeah, totally.
And why do you think you make the kind of work that you make?
Well, look, I'd say art is just intrinsic in who I am. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I find the process is quite meditative, makes me slow down, be still, observe, things like that. And I find it quite freeing as well, especially when you're experimenting and just, you never quite know what you're going to come up with, and it keeps things fresh. But yeah, I do hope that the viewer gets a sense of that also, that calmness and contemplation when viewing the work, perhaps. And perhaps just serves as a reminder to pause and reflect on the everyday. And I mean, life is fleeting. We've just got to make the most of things.
Appreciate every moment.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you, Janet. It has been a real pleasure meeting you.
Oh, thank you. You too.
And talking to you and hanging out in the garden and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So thank you very, very much for being on the Creative Matters podcast. And I wish you all the best. And I look forward to seeing your next solo exhibition.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure being here.